Ultimate IEM Buying Guide Vocal Edition. If you love male vocals, female vocals, you listen to a lot of R&B, anime soundtrack, K-pop, J-pop, whatever it is, if it focuses on the vocals and you love that genre, this video is for you. Now, it's not just gonna be any normal buying guide where I cover all the options possible at every price range. No, in this guideline, I'm gonna give you guys just a few options that you guys can start with and then upgrade to in the future. So this is a buying guide and also an upgrade path at the same time. Hey friends, Timmy back to another video on Guest Audio, and today of course we have the Ultimate IEM Buying Guide Vocal Edition. Now, before we jump into the IEMs themselves, there are two different ways of looking at vocalists. Number one is you want something that's super neutral, right? Neutral, true to life, not too bassy, not too trebly, just very kind of baseline referencey style type of IEMs. Those are typically very good if you want to get a sense of realism in your music, right? Without any coloration, if you will. Number two way of looking at it is that you want the most emotions, the most liveliness of your vocals, and for those you would go for IEMs that has more of an upper mid-range presence and a higher treble energy at the same time to really bring forth that vocalist, make them shine, make them come to life, make them more emotional and lively than your regular IEMs out there. In this video, we're going to be exploring the neutral side first, and part two we'll be exploring the lively side. All right, so for the neutral side, to start off, there are two different options that I recommend. One is at $25, that is the Tri-Pro and Leia, and number two is the $40 Tanzjim Ola. Now, these two are the bare bones cheapest you could go for this hobby that would guarantee you a certain level of quality where you won't really need to upgrade for a little bit amount of time. The Leia, I haven't talked about this IEM on the channel yet, but the Tri-Pro and Leia is essentially an in-between Do New Titan S and Moondrop Aria when it comes to tuning. It's very inoffensive, it's a little bit less bassy aria while still retaining a relatively neutral mid-range and upper mid-range energy. The treble here is what's really lacking. It doesn't have the most sparkliest of treble, but when it comes to just listening for neutrality's sake or for realism take, the Leia is the cheapest one that I recommend. Technical performance wise, it's not the most detailed IEM ever, but you don't expect that for $25. Soundstage and imaging is the same story. Again, you don't expect that at this price. So yes, Leia, cheapest one you could go for. Now, if you want an even more referencey style, even more neutral than the Leia itself, you would go for the Tanzjim Ola. This one has almost no bass power whatsoever, especially in the sub bass. There's barely any sub bass at all. You do feel a slight bit of mid bass presence, but not at all a highlight in these IEMs. What's gonna shine super well in the Ola is how forward the vocals come across. It has a lot of upper mid-range energy. Treble is very well done, smooth, not too much energy. It's borderline being on the bright side, but it's not quite there, so that's why it's in the neutral video. But yes, the Tanzjim Ola is a fantastic choice if you want slightly bit more energy than the Leia and a more clean and referencey style of tuning than the Leia itself. Details, soundstage, and imaging wise also better than the Leia. Of course, it is $15 more, but in this case, to me, it is well worth the price tag. Now, for those of you who have a little bit more money to start off with, I suggest you start at this next IEM right here. That is the Moondrop Aria. Of course, what else can it be? The Moondrop Aria, just to give you guys some context, is one of those IEMs that is criminally underpriced. It's $79, but it performs just as well as a lot of IEMs, $150 to $200 in price. Meaning, if you get the Aria, especially if you start off with the Aria, your next upgrade from this won't be until at least $200, which means you can use the Aria for a very long time. And for some of you guys out there, you might even stop at the Aria because a lot of people, especially normal consumers, they don't really spend $200 on IEM. You can even end game at the Aria if you want to. Now, the Aria, in comparison to previous two that I just mentioned, the Aria is just superior in almost every single way, especially when it comes to the detail department. When you listen to the Aria right next to the Ola or the Leia, you feel this sense of claustrophobic when it comes to those two other IEMs. The details is just not quite there. There's something missing in the music, while the aria is presenting a lot of details very well, a lot of nuances in the song, much better than the other two IEMs. That's why I urge you, if you have the money, you should start off at the aria and maybe even stay at this for a very long time. The one biggest con that I always talk about when you're buying cheaper IEMs is that you're gonna wanna upgrade. And what happens when you wanna upgrade? You're gonna wanna sell your old IEMs, and if your old IEMs is just so cheap, like $25, $35, it's not worth selling. You're not gonna get that much money back, so you're gonna end up keeping that IEM alongside buying a new one. So yeah, Moondrop Aria, if you have the money, start here. Next up the food chain, we have the $200 C Audio Yume Midnight. Now when it comes to vocal recreation, the naturalness, the true to life realism, the Midnight is the greatest starting point of all. It's super natural. The bass to the mid-range separation is very clean. There is bass in here. You do feel some rumbly sub-bass, so for those bass lovers, there's still some of that in here as well. But the best part and the biggest selling point of the Midnight is, again, how beautiful and natural the vocalist comes across. The first time I listened to the original Yume, I was blown away completely by how well this part is tuned. Now, with the Midnight being the upgrade to the Yume, you get this extra bit of details that the original Yume doesn't have, while keeping the very beautiful natural tune that the original Yume has. So yes, Midnight, love it through and through. $200, great upgrade to the Aria, worth it upgrade as well. Now when it comes to the next upgrade, a lot of you seasoned veterans might think the Blessing 2 Dust, and it is a very solid choice, and I do recommend the Blessing 2 Dust as an option if you want to upgrade from the Yume, especially if you like how the Yume is tuned. The Dust is very similar. It's gonna feel right at home with how the Yume Midnight is tuned. So a direct upgrade from the Midnight to the Dust is a very nice one as well. But one other IEM that I want to suggest as an upgrade over the Midnight is this one right here. TA Audio Oracle, $540. To me, I prefer the tuning of this over the Blessing 2 Dust, although I'll have to say, the Blessing 2 Dust is more detailed than the Oracle, which is extremely impressive for a $330 IEM. But you guys already know, the Blessing 2 Dust is a benchmark at $300. It is one of the greatest and most talked about IEM for a reason. So if you want to go for that IEM, still a fantastic option. But if you want to go for the most beautifully tuned IEM ever, the Oracle is that. For me, even compared to its bigger brother, the Monarch Mark II, I still prefer the tuning on the Oracle just ever so slightly. Something about it, from the bass to the mid-range to the upper mid-range, is done so smoothly. The bass is well separated from the mid-range while still giving it enough of a low-end boost to make male vocals and female vocals feel real and not lacking or thin in any way. The upper mid-range is done just correctly. It's so smooth while still at the same time highlighting all the emotional nuances of the vocalist. I love the Oracle through and through, and anyone that I recommend this one to who have bought it also have loved it as well. So yes, the Oracle is one of my favorite of all time. Top 3 in my collection. Easily, even though I own a lot of flagship, I still consider this one of the best that I own today. And for $540, you can easily end game on this one as well. And in fact, if you want to end game on the Oracle, you will not be disappointed at all. But of course, if you want an upgrade, there's one more. Now, the end game piece for a neutral style vocal lover, this is the end of the road, the best you can grab, and lucky for you, the best you can grab is only $1,000. Now, a lot of you guys listening right now might be thinking, Timmy, $1,000 is a lot. Trust me, I know it's a lot, but in comparison to a lot of other flagship level IEMs, $1,000 is half the price of those other ones, okay? So it's considered cheap when it comes to the end game market. And this one is, of course, DA Audio Monarch Mark II. Now we touch upon this a little bit in the Oracle section. This one is the bigger brother to the Oracle. What it does better than the Oracle is the overall details. It is much more resolving than the Oracle. The stage is wider, the imaging is superb on this, and the tuning is just as balanced as the Oracle. The biggest difference you'll find between the two is going to be in the treble. The treble on the Mark II is just done to perfection. One of the smoothest sounding treble you'll ever hear. Zero fatigues, zero sibilances, while at the same time delivering enough energy to make every vocals feel natural. The Monarch Mark II is the pinnacle of pinnacles when it comes to vocal IEMs. Now again, I do prefer the Oracle's tuning just slightly bit more. I feel it's a little bit more natural, but you can't escape the fact that the Monarch Mark II is just so much more resolving, and music just sound much better on the Mark II overall than the Oracle. So if you want to upgrade from the Oracle to the Mark II, I would say it is an absolute worth it upgrade. And for $1,000, this thing is probably the cheapest in-game IEM you can grab right now. All right, that's it for the buying guide of today. I have more coming soon. Of course, we have the vocal part 2, we have bass lover, treble lover, and if I can think of more specific genres, I'll come up with more for you guys. Let me know what you guys think of this video down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.